It is 4 p.m. on Monday, September 8th, 2025, and I will call this City Council study session to order. I do want to thank everyone who's joining us this evening. Just a reminder, there is no public comment at study sessions. And if Councilmember Whalen would lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to note for the record that Councilmember Peretti is absent this evening. I have not heard from Councilmember White, so we will mark him absent as of now, and if he arrives, we'll note that for the record. Outside of that, all council is present. And for staff this evening, we have Interim Director Robeck joining us. We have Director Madden. We have Police Chief Tony Hernandez and City Clerk Tricia Summers. So we have one item this evening. It is a presentation of our electric rate study. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Director Madden.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Today you'll be hearing the findings through a consolidated PowerPoint of our recent distribution system analysis and electric rate study. To present those two findings, we have Donald Hall here and Elliot Tanos with Quanta. Also in the audience, we have our BPA rep through Bonneville Power Association, and we have Patelco in the room who helped us acquire Quanta to perform this survey. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Don, who will take us through the first part of the PowerPoint, and he may want to introduce other people on the team.
Good afternoon. As Dustin said, I'm Don Hall. I am an executive advisor for Quanta Technology. I've been in the industry for 44 years next month. I calculated that on the flight here and couldn't believe it, but since I'm only 26, but it's a long time. I've specialized in distribution systems, analysis of distribution systems, distribution reliability, resilience, those type of areas my whole career. And Patelco, I don't know if everyone knows Patelco, but Patelco is a engineering, design, and construction and maintenance company that's here local. And we're sister companies. We're both owned by Quanta Services. And there's some slides in the back of this deck if you're interested in knowing more about that. Quanta Services owns over 200 operating companies. And when you add up all of the employees, it's something like, I believe it's 84,000 employees. Most of the work they do is construction. We're one of the two consulting firms that are part of the family. Patelco brought us this opportunity, and Patelco already had terms and conditions with the city of Milton, so it was easier and faster to work through Patelco than to go through the contracting process directly with the city, and that's why, that's how things evolved. And over here is Elliot Tanos. Elliot and I have worked together for decades. We both retired from the same company.
Okay. Elliot Tanis, I, like Don, have about 40 years of experience, all in the utility side, both in the United States and internationally. My work has been concentrated in utility regulatory work, focusing on cost of service and tariff development. Pleased to be here, and we've enjoyed the work with the teams that we've had. Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. Yep. Okay, so I guess it was April timeframe, if I remember correctly, that we started work with the city. Let me see, page down. Here's an agenda for today. I'm going to go through the distribution system analysis and the process, the findings, the recommendations, conclusions. And this work, body of work, informs Elliot's body of work because the recommendations we looked out 10 years, and Elliott takes those into consideration in the financial analysis that he does as part of the rate study. Then after I'm done, Elliott will present on the rate study and tariff strategies. Similar agenda. As we already said, Elliott and I were leads on the project. Patelka's here, and there's some information in the back of the slide deck about the companies if you're interested in that. So the distribution analysis is a pretty standard process or typical process in the industry. We start out by gathering data, then we create engineering models and scenarios of the distribution system, the distribution feeders. We prepare a 10-year forecast of peak loads, and this is an extreme forecast so that it's forecasting the most extreme winter and most extreme summer you're likely to see over a 10-year period. And that's done to stress the feeders as much as possible and to see in the analysis how they fare. We also looked at the possible new backup ties with Puget Sound. One issue we had there is we weren't able to get information from Puget Sound on their distribution feeders, so we weren't able to model them to see how things would look all the way down to Milton customers. But we were able to make some assumptions at those tie points, and the results of those are in the final report, which Dustin has. Then once we do all the analysis, we looked at the results, came up with any improvements that we saw. We also, in gathering the data, that was the most challenging part of the project for me and for Elliott. And there's 4 or 5 IT systems that are generally involved in that, regardless of the utility size. And I should have mentioned that, but Quanta Technology, we're in US and Canada, and we've worked with the largest utility, which is Exelon, with 9 million customers. And we've worked with one of the smallest, which is the city of Newberry in Florida. And they have fewer customers than the city does. I can't remember exactly how many, but they only have 1 distribution circuit. That's interesting. And we provide the same services regardless of the company. So we developed the improvements. They filter down over to Elliott so that he can put them in the financial analysis. And then we develop a final report, which Dustin has the final reports. Findings. Good news is that your distribution system looks pretty good. We found no issues under normal operating conditions with the extreme forecast through 2034. And then under emergency conditions, and this is something that's typically looked at in these type of studies, it's called an N-1 contingency. If you lose one of your 3 feeders under peak loads, you can resupply all of the customers that were out of service with the other 2 circuits. You have enough capacity and voltage support in the system for that, which is good. Then we found some notes from the field, and there were a couple areas identified as weak points. It said that one point had jumpers instead of permanent construction, and actually both of those did. I'm not sure if these still exist, but if they do, the recommendation is to replace them with permanent construction. Also, this may not mean a lot to you, but the feeder that supplies Bridgepoint development, there's a type of switching device there that actually should be replaced with a different type of device. So that there's an electrical reason for that, so that you don't single phase the Bridgepoint development, because they are a three-phase customer, which I know doesn't mean a whole lot, but single phasing a three-phase customer is not a good thing. Penn Light helped us out as well by using some portable devices and called data loggers, and they measured the loading on each individual phase of each circuit and gave us the data. Feeder 1 looks like the three phases may be not well balanced, but it's difficult to say. We only had one reading. So you'll see the recommendation is to take some additional readings under peak load conditions and compare them with the readings we got here and see if the feeder does need to be balanced, which is a matter of moving some taps out on the circuit. The Surprise Lake substation transformer is very old. It's 53 years old. That's pretty old for a substation transformer. And you guys are at high risk of, if that were to fail, you don't have a spare transformer, you don't have a mobile. You would be reliant on PSE's ties. And so our recommendation is to talk with BPA and try to get that transformer replaced or get another transformer and actually have two at the station for redundancy. Let's see. Interestingly, I talked to the Bridgepoint developers several times, and the building loads there are right now predicted to be a lot less than they initially were because of the type of usage that they have now. It appears they were planned for a different type of business to go in than is going in now, because they have a very robust electric system to be able to supply a lot of load, but the buildings are warehouses, and most of the building doesn't have heating or air conditioning. And that's true for all four of the buildings. So the ultimate load with the current tenants is going to be a lot less than we initially thought. Being that they're leased, there's always the possibility that another type of business will come in, and we talk about that in the report. It could go from not really a whole lot of load to very large load, depending on who they lease to over the coming years. Already mentioned Puget Sound. We weren't able to get their information. These are the tie locations that we looked at. Dustin's team came up with these locations, and there's a report that he has that talks about each location and has a picture of each location and what would be needed to make that tie. That's it.
Jump in real quick. So that tie, if we can go back just one map, Val Buzinoff, our project manager, put this together, and these are all potential ties. There are areas where PSE meets with our grid system, and we could easily, in theory, tie together. There are some differences in amount of load that need to be factored in, and there'd be some capital improvement with that. And what these points would do is allow us to have backup power when we no longer, currently we have TPU as a backup power supply on a very limited time basis. But that is going away as part of the 167. So this is a way for us to provide backup power when and if we lose transmission.
Thanks, Dustin. Then we get into some of the IT systems. The city owns some very good IT products, actually. What we found is they're not fully utilized or not fully implemented. And that resulted in the problem of us gathering data, because a lot of the data just doesn't exist in any type of system. So when we were building the models, we had to make some assumptions, which are all outlined in the report, that Dustin has. Luckily or not luckily, when I started my career, I used to do these type of analysis on stone tablets with hammers and chisels. So I've done many studies where the data was less than perfect. So I was able to work with our engineers and explain what assumptions to make. So we were able to come up with a reasonable model. The asset accounting module that you have is called Cartograph, but it's not fully implemented, and not all of the city's assets have been captured. And by assets, I mean all of the pieces of the distribution system. Your AMI system is a very good AMI system. We actually have several AMI experts at Quanta, and one of them is very familiar with Census, which is the company that provides the AMI system. The city contracted with a third party as a solution provider, and we did not have very good relationship with that third party, and my understanding is neither does the city. It took, I think it was about 4 months to be able to get your data, which they had, out of their system and into Dustin's hands. And that's, plus they were less than polite about it when we were working with them. So there's a recommendation about that. Your AMI system was installed in 2017. AMI is the metering system, by the way, that's used to bill customers for their consumption. AMI stands for either automated or advanced metering infrastructure. So it was installed in 2017. They're designed for about 20 years of service. And some of the IOUs have convinced their regulators to reduce the depreciation time as low as 7 years, 5 to 7 years, but 20 years is generally the life of an AMI system. And so we have some recommendations about planning for replacing your system, because that's not all that far away. Another IT system, you have a very good GIS, which is Geographic Information System. It's called ArcGIS. It's a product by Esri. Esri has been around for decades. They have, and this is a very good product. Unfortunately, there's only enough data in the system for the city to produce drawings. The actual data behind each piece of asset doesn't exist in the database that's behind the ArcGIS product. And this caused us a lot of delay as well in building the models, because typically utility would have a complete or near complete GIS model, and then we would download that into the tools that we use for analyzing the distribution system. And it usually takes a week or two to get all the kinks ironed out. Unfortunately, the city did not have all that information, so it took some of us noodling back at the headquarters to come up with the best way to develop the model without having that information. Also, you have a SCADA system, if you will, a metering, monitoring, and control system on each of the 3 circuits at the substation that no longer works. What utility was it that came in? Penlight did for that? Okay. Penlight came in and tried to take some readings off the system, and they were not able to get it to work. No, it was Lakeview that came in for that. It's right there. Yeah, I'm sorry, Lakeview. So we have some recommendations there. And then we have some recommendations around storage process that could make things a little more efficient. So our recommendations, there's 15 of them. I'll go through them fairly quickly, as I've talked about most of them. The first and second ones are replacing the temporary construction that's there and the switching device that's there. The third one is about the phase balance that I mentioned on feeder 1. 4, you're already doing, that's working with PSE to establish at least 3 tie points, as Dustin talked about, to be able to re-energize the city circuits should you lose the transformer at the substation or the transmission supply. We recommend that you talk to BPA about replacing the transformer at the substation because it is very old. And in a perfect world, you would actually get a new transformer, keep the old transformer there, and have it available for failures. And that's explained in the report. We recommend that this type of analysis that we did on the distribution system be done every 5 or so years. It hasn't been done for the city in 20 years, at least of everything we could find, reports and documents and things. At some point in time, the city should extend another circuit up to the Bridgepoint area so that there's a loop tie through there. We really didn't put a date on it, and I don't believe you included it in the financial analysis. It's really a judgment call. When you need it and it's not there, that's when you wish you had put it in, but there's nothing that we can point to say that you definitely need to do it now or 3 years from now. What that would give you is another way to supply Bridgepoint and the customers south of Bridgepoint should feeder 1 fail or somebody hits a pole in the middle of feeder 1 and takes down a few sections of feeder 1 going up Fifth Avenue. Going up Fifth Avenue, a loop tie would allow you to quickly close back in, resupply while the damage is being repaired. Now we get into the IT systems. Recommendation to fully implement the asset accounting system and perform an asset evaluation to identify risks of equipment that should probably be proactively replaced. There's a lot of equipment out on the distribution system, from the meters at the customers' homes to the transformers that supply the customers. They're either cans up on a pole or they're small, low-profile green boxes you might see in a neighborhood every 5th house or so for underground subdivisions. Recommend that an asset valuation and depreciation study be done. Recommend auditing and modifying the city's AMI contracts with Census and the third-party service provider. We don't know what your contracts say, and so we don't know what you can and can't do. But if you could work, our expert tells me that if you could work directly with Census instead of having a third-party service provider, that would be the best way to go. 2032, you're going to need to start replacing the AMI system. It'll be reaching its end of life at that point in time. What you'll see is more meters will start to fail from customer locations. And once they start failing, they tend to, a lot of them start failing and you get an exponential failure rate. Continue to seek the permanent employee with GIS skills, which is already posted, I understand. That's an important position to have so that the GIS system can be completed. Suggest that, or recommend that the metering, monitoring, and control system, which in our world is called a SCADA system, supervisory control and data acquisition, that be replaced. That's the system that doesn't work at all at the moment. And then augment the current equipment acquisition, handling, and storage processes with a software module and related processes to improve efficiency there. Any questions?
Councilmember Cedar?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for being here and for the thorough study. I have a few questions on this portion. First, the PSE, you actually made a comment there as you were going through the findings that surprised me, which is that the tie-ins are currently being developed. Maybe I misunderstood the status of the tie-ins right now. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, Dustin can correct me if I'm wrong, but the existing tie is with Tacoma. It's going away. Okay. And so that leaves you with no ties to anywhere outside the city and one transformer at the substation, which is the worst possible position to be in because the transformers do fail. So what Dustin's staff has done, what Val did, is he's gone out into the field and he's identified several locations where you could potentially tie with PSE, Puget Sound. And it will take some construction in each of those locations to make the tie. You have to install some equipment and you might have to extend some wire or some cable. We looked at each one of those from a study perspective in our model and tried to provide some information about what we saw at each one of those ties. But unfortunately, we did not have the PSE information on their side of where those ties are. So there's still work to be done. They will probably want to model and study their circuits as well as your circuits when those ties are closed to make sure that everything works okay, nothing's overloaded, and that all the customers receive the minimum, at least the minimum allowable voltage.
Okay, thank you. So I think that clarified it, but so my understanding is right now we do not have any tie to PSE, correct? Okay, and so that is something that has to happen. Can you give me some idea of why PSE hasn't responded? That seems odd.
PSE has responded. They've been a willing partner in vetting this opportunity. We didn't have the information that we needed, so we needed to conduct this study of our distribution system. Now we have that in place. A few other things have changed recently with BPA's new contract that is coming out, and its indication that BPA will be the ones to replace and finance the substation. And the other thing is the TPU connection. It was kind of a gray area. So we had to get to this point. So we have all the relevant information. Now BPA, we met with BPA last week. They're going to initiate a study with PSE on the distribution connection, and that will take some time. But yeah, it is moving forward.
Okay, awesome. That's very reassuring. Thank you. Sounds like we're on track.
Yes.
I appreciate that. I have a couple more questions that I'll knock out here. So let's say that the transformer did fail tonight. What happens?
You know better than I do.
So
Your lights would go out.
yeah, so for the next year, we still have a backup tie with TPU. It hasn't been severed yet. It's right down at the bottom of our hill, Milton Way in Yuma. And so at that point, there's a distribution. And what we mean by distribution, it's a backup. It's not used unless our primary power transmission goes down. So currently, for the next year, we do have a backup tie with TPU. When WashDOT comes in to put 167 in, they're going to sever that. And TPU is not interested in partnering with the city moving forward for distribution. They have a lot of new load growth coming on, and they're prioritizing that. And so now we are at a position where a year from now, we will be without a connection. So your question, what happens tonight? We go on TPU. And in a year from now, we should be able to go on, PSE or have another fail-safe in place.
Okay, great. Thank you. That clarifies. Just so I understand too, it sounded like we're trying to automate that switch to PSE if it fails. Is it automated with TPU right now, or is that a manual? Okay. As far as GIS and SCADA upgrades, Are those, I mean, I know where we are with GIS and I appreciate the getting a GIS employee in. I guess with SCADA, it's not a substantial cost, but are there grant opportunities available there, or what does that implementation look like from kind of the city's perspective?
I had one of our experts in SCADA at Quanta take a look at what you currently have, and he's actually worked with some municipals, some small utilities in Florida, and he came up with a design that's not all that different from what you have, except that it does connect two computers into the system. The old system only has some panel meters actually on, is it on a wall or a cabinet? Yeah. On-site. Yeah. But the newer technologies allow a direct connect to a computer, and plus they store the information. They store the readings every so often. And the system that our experts spec'd would be able to store many years of information. I can't remember what he said exactly, but it was a lot of years, I think around 20 years of information. And it'll probably be obsolete before it runs out of memory. But that would allow the electric utility guys to look and see what's happened. There's a lot of things they can do with the computer that you can't do with panel meters. They can look at trends. They can look at, especially on each circuit has 3 phases, 3 sets of wires. And the idea in North America is to keep the loads between the 3 phases fairly balanced. It's not possible to keep them exactly balanced because each phase is tapped, and that's what goes to the customer's homes. So it's difficult to get a perfect balance on each feeder. But they'll be able to see that. They'll be able to actually, if they need to, and want to, they could control the circuit breakers at the substation through that system. So
I heard a couple of things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that your company, you're not just giving us this information. It sounds like you'd also be able to manage implementation of a lot of these recommendations. Is that correct?
yeah, between us and Patelco, we could. Right.
Okay, and then it sounds like replacing, I'm going to say it wrong again, SCADA. I'm going to keep pronouncing it wrong intentionally now.
It depends where you are in the country. I always say SCADA. A lot of people say SCADA.
All right, good copy. So it sounds like that's actually upgrading, not just kind of replacing with the same system.
You can't get the same system today.
Perfect. And then the third thing that I just wanted to clarify, I saw Director Madden write it down. Do you know if grant opportunities generally exist for that type of upgrade? That seems like something that feels like a grant.
I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in that area.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. You always do. I appreciate it. I think I have one more here. I guess you kind of addressed it with the AMI replacement. So obviously that's the looming cost here as it weighs out. I guess from a fiscal perspective, Director Madden, do you know if that is on our kind of capital improvement radar?
Yes, it is. I've been talking with our metering team, and we have started to see, those meters, the AMI function out in the field start to fail, and those meters are about 15 years old. So there is kind of a bow wave coming of meter replacement that the city will have to undertake. We are looking at different ways we can do that and what product we're going to be moving forward with. There will be a new capital line item in your budget for consideration for meter replacement. And likely it would be a 3 to 4 year process.
Gotcha. And so at some point that meter replacement is going to overwhelm the cost of just an all-out system replacement, and I'm just trying to understand the process, or does AMI system replacement occur piecemeal like that? So each time you replace a meter, are you able to swap in a new meter, or does this have to happen in one fell swoop?
We would go out, we would take out the 15-year-old meters and replace it with a new unit. All those units are programmed with AMI. It's just that the older unit will start to fail based on its life expectancy. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I guess what I'm confused about is it looks to me like on that chart, it says 1.6 million in 2032 will be a cost.
The AMI system is not just the meter. It's got a back end to it that receives the data, processes all the data, massages the data for the billing system. And the technology actually becomes obsolete today in about every 8 to 10 years. Even though the system that you have will last usually up to 20 years. And the old meters with the old dials on them, they would last forever. And they only cost $50. But you can't read them remotely. And the AMI meters provide a lot more information than just the billing consumption. They can provide information about when the power actually went out. It's got a date and time stamp, and it sends a flag that says I'm out, and that's all recorded. They can sample the voltage periodically and record what the voltage is. If you have someone complaining about flickering lights, for instance, it might be a low voltage situation, and you wouldn't have to send someone out with a special meter and take readings and go through that process. The AMI system could record that, have it available. And there's some other functionality that is escaping me right now, but do you want to?
I stepped out for a moment. Was your question whether you're going to be incurring that 1.6 million in 1 year, or did Don explain that that's going to be over a 5-year period?
I didn't get into the finances.
Okay, yeah. So it's not a 1.6 million in 2032. It'll be spread over 5 years, and then thereafter you have that annual expense.
Okay. Thank you both. That's very informative. Thank you, all three of you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Operator?
Is PSE our only option right now when Tacoma leaves?
Yes, it's the only viable option that has infrastructure built out adjacent to us.
You said viable. Are there other options?
We could run new lines from another provider, but the expense, that's what I mean by viable.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. So essentially, we're looking at, first, we've got to get the tie-in from PSC and determine where that is. And we have to do that with a year, roughly, correct? And then also, we're dealing with 3 software upgrades and equipment, correct? And that'll probably be financed. Is that really it in a nutshell? That's what we're going to be looking at?
Well, that's partly it. What we looked at with the 15 recommendations, those are, what Quanta proposed and what they saw as weak points. And so we don't need to do all of these in the next short term. I would say GIS coordinator, getting that up on board, starting to come up with a game plan for a full meter swap out of the AMI system, and then build that relationship directly with Census. Those are my immediate marching orders.
Right, so that's what but initially, those to get the PSC connection.
It is.
Correct.
If I doubt we will be able to run all the models with PSE and actually have that viable and running in a year. But we will do our best to meet those timelines.
And I understand that down the road, it's going to be phasing in the software. I understand that. So what are you looking at over a period of time? So like Finnet paying for it in 5 years?
Maybe I can jump in.
Sorry to jump ahead.
You'll see in the report,
Okay.
the rates report, that it has, it's phased things so that it's sequential.
Right.
You might, for example, you want to know, you want to have your GIS in before you start with your asset accounting. It all makes sense.
Okay.
So there's one chart that gives you all the CapEx programs for the 10 years
Okay,
by program and by year,
okay.
and by totals for each year.
So I'm just jumping ahead.
No, I'm not going to be showing it here. It's a great question.
Oh, okay.
It's in the report, though, and it's detailed in there. Yeah, but it does follow a sequence, and what we tried to do because of, the staffing that you have in terms of the magnitude,
Right.
so that it's a practical CapEx program, bringing in all these programs.
I mean, that's what I would like to know.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
it's documented in there, step by step.
Any other questions on this section of the presentation? Okay.
And lastly, should all of those recommendations be acted upon, your customers will be served very well through 2035, and you should not have any issues with the distribution system.
It's a heavy one.
Yeah, thank you.
This is here, right, this page down? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Don, and Mayor Shana, City Council Commissioners and city officials. Thank you for having us, and we're honored to be here. We'd also like to thank the Milton Electric Utility professional team for their close collaboration throughout this project, and thanks to the BPA specialists who provided valuable assistance and information. Finally, we'd like to thank our colleagues at Potelco for their excellent work and collaboration. If okay, I will stick very close to my notes during this presentation to be concise. Please ask questions if you would as we go through. It's always better to have dialogue. In developing our rate recommendations for Milton Electric, we have followed a well-established process that is applied in the electric, natural gas, water, and wastewater sectors in the proceedings throughout the United States year after year. The process consists of 3 primary steps. The first is determine the utility's cost of service or revenue requirement. What does it cost to serve all the customers? The second is to allocate those total costs equitably to all the customer classes, to estimate what the costs are and to allocate those costs so you can determine what each customer class costs you to serve. Finally, you use that information to design the rates to be applied to each of the customer classes. Okay, the first step is revenue requirement analysis. As part of our revenue requirement analysis, we found that the city has built a very strong financial foundation. It's evidenced by the fund revenues, by the gains, and the fund balances. The city also has the important ability to adjust rates each year based upon the CPI-U index for the prior year. Also, Fund 401 has a solid margin as percentage of revenue of about 14%. And finally, Funds 401, 402, and 409 each have substantial balances. So you have a very strong financial position going forward. You can see that even in the last column there, the fund balance for 401 at 2.8 million, 402, 4.8 million, and 409 balance, almost $1 million. The energy industry, however, in the region and the nation, it is in a dynamic state, and we have to really prepare for that environment. Power demand is expected to continue to increase with data centers, EVs, building electrification, and other intense energy users like cryptocurrency mining facilities, cannabis production. This is driving electricity capacity and energy prices much higher with greater volatility and uncertainty. So this is the environment we're moving into, and we have to prepare for that. On the regulatory side, BPA has recently concluded 2 important proceedings. The first proceeding, BP 26, increases power supply prices by almost 8 to 9%, and transmission prices by close to 20% that would be applicable in fiscal years 226 to 228. The second proceeding, which is known as BPPRDM, which is Public Rate Design Methodology, introduces a new rate methodology that will go into effect in fiscal year 229. The new rate design methodology will move from primarily fixed charges structure to one based on variable energy charges and demand charges, and will expose the city to higher energy prices moving forward. Importantly, as Don has spoken and Dustin, the recent BPA decision may also relieve the city from having to purchase and rebuild the BPA Surprise Lake substation. However, the process to appeal to BPA, and BPA has been tremendous during this whole process, the process to appeal to BPA regarding the substation rebuild needs to be understood at this time, and the rebuilding should be pursued. Don has explained very carefully the precarious situation you are with the substation. So you should pursue that at this time. Okay, so what we tried to model these dynamics, including the BPA pricing, changes under the existing rate design, and the new methodology, as well as the required changes to the Surprise Lake substation project. Our projections suggest that the city's ability to index rates to CPI-U, together with the margin that's embedded in your rates currently, will allow the funds to support the ongoing operations and the required CapEx programs. So we've taken Don's work and the city's work, Patelco's work, and we've put it into the model to make sure that your revenues, just with the indexing, would be sufficient to cover those. However, as I'm showing, the rising power supply and transmission costs, the CapEx programs, and the ongoing operational requirements will reduce the margins over the study period. So if I had a pointer, if you see that margin percentage of total revenue, you've built that to 14%. That's then, what is the margin on revenue? And for utilities that do not use a rate of return approach, a base rate of return, this is one of the indexes they use, or one of the key points that they looked at to see what the performance has been. And you've built that to 14%, but you're going to see it declining through this study period, and it goes beyond the 2030 period and it declines further. Still very reasonable at this point, right? Even to that level. But it is declining because your margins are shrinking there. Also, although 401 continues to grow, if you can see the growth there from 2.7 million, this is the balance. It's rising several million over this time frame. It continues to grow, but at the same time, that 402 is declining, right? You can see that decline. And that's, you have your current fund transfer requirements, say you have 3%, right, and 7%, right? We'll talk about a little bit, but under those constraints, this is what's happening. 409 is projected to increase gradually over the study period. There's not as much being drawn from 409 as 402 is your really workhorse for capital programs. Are there any questions so far that we can field?
Councilmember Cedar?
Yeah, just quickly on the margin percent of total revenue, what, in your experience, sounds like you've done this a lot, what's a healthy number for a municipality?
That's a
to
great
target?
question. I'll be very frank with you. I'm coming from a heavy rate-based rate of return environment. So what I did is I tried to research this. And what I've seen was 5 to 15% seems to be reasonable, okay? And that's why I'm looking at it and saying, we're covering our revenue requirement with the margins here, okay? Again, your city planners have targeted that 14%, I think, or 15%, which some utilities are achieving. But it's still a reasonable level, right? Often in rate design work for utilities that are municipally owned, you use a cash basis, cash needs basis, and that's going to give you your capital recovery through rates, your debt service without this margin, really. But what the industry has done over the years is they've done better, and they've been able to achieve a margin. So to answer your question directly, what I could see from the research I did, about 5 to 15% is seemed to be reasonable. You're going to decline somewhat from this as you move into 30 to 35, largely because of the AMI replacement. That's going to take, several $100,000 in 32, 34, 35.
Yeah, and just to follow up, you said it there, and I'll probably ask more questions later on it, but it seems almost axiomatic that you'd want a higher margin percentage if you intend to avoid debt service. Would you agree with that?
Say that again, please.
You would want a higher percentage if your municipality wants to avoid debt service to fund capital improvement.
Well, here's my challenge with that.
Please.
If you look at account 401, right, you are building a massive amount of money there, as far as I can see it. I mean, relatively. You're going from 2 million up to 6, 7 million. And I'm concerned about supra CPI index increases. All right, if you go above that, right, that's to get there, you can either become more efficient, increase your margin, reduce your losses someplace, or you have to raise rates. And I'm concerned about the fund being where it is in the latter years and having to increase rates to keep those margins high. There's a scenario that was done in the study that looked at debt service to try to maintain 402, or bringing on financing, debt financing. And you can do it very well, right? Your rates will support it, and you'll support that fund as far as you want. Debt, taking on the debt would preserve those as compared to, so I've heard before that you might be reluctant. You took out the 2 million for the substation, right? That can be, I think, reapplied or refocused. Am I answering your question or no?
Yeah, you are, and I'm excited for your further slides. So I'll defer for now. Thank you.
All right. Please ask away, because it's the best way to get information for both of us. All of
So
us.
you said so this has the potential to go below 5%, even though 15 to 5 is your target.
Yeah.
So how do you balance against
So
that?
this is, okay, when I started this, I was trying to maintain your fund balances. So I was able to do that by flexing your transfer amount percentage. Okay, so I did, right? And that's logical to me. So that was my first concern. I'm concerned about actually the consumers at this point, saying, okay, and we're all consumers. We have these large balances. Why are you coming to me for more money?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so my concern would be, this is the way I would do it, okay? I would see where I'm comfortable. I would take the ordinance that you have now that says thou shalt, pull 3%, and I would say thou shalt take a minimum of 3%. It's a very easy fix. And this way you can transfer funds from the 401 to 402 and 409. And this way the funds are maintained. Now you're going to drop your margins down, but you're going to have the funds to be able to obtain debt financing, I would assume, right? And this way you can accomplish both things. And the reason I put that scenario in the study, when you look at it, is to show you that you can see you're still maintaining pretty good margins, but you're preserving your fund balances, okay, by debt service. The debt service pushes the cost out, but it maintains it over that time. I hope I'm being clear. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
No,
asking
Okay,
I'm
that's the way-
tracking.
That's the way I would do it. I asked myself, because I was thinking, if someone has targeted that 14%, right, are they going to be happy with 5%? Right? But my thought was, hey, you've got great margin, you've got great balances over here. I'd be very concerned about increasing my rates if I have those kind of fund balances,
Right.
right? I mean, that to me is logical. Most of the rate stuff is logical. Okay? So you say. Huh? So you say.
Yeah.
Good? Okay. All righty, let's move on. Okay, so we're talking about the customers. What is the projected customer impact? So our model incorporates CPIU index adjustments that impact the rates and the customer bills. The customer bill impact is shown in the base case, which is that blue line, right? This is the only direct impact on customer bills in our model. It's the CPI-U adjustment. Now, we've shown the other cases presented in the figure to portray the scale of the substation CapEx, this large increase, and the impact of the debt financing. See, the debt financing brings your costs down. It's that green line. It brings your cost, and these don't, it's not apples, it's apples and oranges to a certain extent because I don't have margins in some of these things. But the green line you see when we debt finance, it's lower than the other options. And then, because I stopped it in 2030, and then it equilibrates with the other lines. I don't see a problem with debt financing. I think it can preserve your fund balances, and you have enough resources to do it. It's available to you. Okay. And the bill is calculated at 800 kWh. I'm not sure, we'll talk about this a bit, what the actual average is for your customers. All right, are there any comments here? Any questions? Okay. All right, let's move on. Okay, so the second step, the cost of service analysis. Okay, in this next step, we take Milton's electric total cost of service for a specific year that's known as a test year, and we use 2024 as the test year, and we allocate the total costs for that year to the customer classes. Practically every major utility rate case in the U.S. will have a class cost of service done to support or defend the utilities rates. So the cost study estimates the cost to serve each customer class, and then it breaks down the cost further into demand, energy, and customer-related costs for each customer class. And that's important to understand what the customer-related costs are, what the demand-related costs are, and what the commodity-related costs are for rate design purposes.
You might want to define those terms.
Okay.
Classic.
So, yeah, if we look at Don makes a good point. The cost of service study looks at the customer class and said, how much does it cost? And then it takes those costs and it breaks it down into energy costs or costs that are variable costs. Demand costs are instantaneous costs. If you have a primary line, it has to be able to meet the peak demand on the peak day of the winter, or the peak hour of the winter, right? So that's a demand-related cost. And then customer-related costs, we'll talk about that shortly. It's like customer, if your service line, your service drop, you have your transformer, your secondary wire, the service drop comes down and goes to the meter, that's a customer-related cost. The meter is a customer-related cost. Customer accounting and collections is a customer-related cost. It's really cost focused on the customer. We'll get to it. Is that clear enough? Okay. And so, I'm sorry, we developed a Excel-based cost of service model specifically for Milton Electric. The two main findings of the cost study are, one, that there is a subsidy flowing from the commercial customers to the residential customers. And the second finding is the base rates that are currently charged do not fully recover the estimated customer-related costs that we were just discussing. Okay, we'll go on. I think it's going to be clear as we go along. Okay, that's what I just referred to. Subsidy occurring from commercial customers, and the fixed charges or the fixed costs are not being recovered by base rates. Okay. In this slide, you can see that Milton's electric rates are dominated by variable charges. So on the left, you see the cost structure consists largely of fixed costs, and the rate structure consists primarily of variable charges. Why does it matter? If customers do not see the right pricing signals, their consumption and investment decisions may not be the best for the system as a whole. If they reduce their consumption, their KW will go down, but the fixed costs will remain and get shifted to the other customers. This may occur with something like distributed energy resources. If someone puts in the technology and reduces their kWh consumption, the fixed costs, those costs to put the primary line up, those costs to put the meter in, they continue. But the revenue goes down, but the costs stay. And what happens is you're shifting those costs to the other customers. Okay. So if we just look at the customer-related costs that we just spoke about, and that service line, we talked about the meter costs, customer accounting, overhead costs. The base rates are covering about half of those costs right now. And again, if one customer reduces the KW consumption, the other customers must pick up that fixed charge. So we're going to have a proposal that seeks to systematically and gradually address that. Okay. Okay, to develop a fair and equitable rates, we must have customer classes that consist of customers with similar characteristics, like their size, like their load profiles. We picked a random sample of Milton's regular customers, and as you can see, they're not similar, with consumption ranging from very low to close to 800,000 kW per year, and with the average residential kW consumption in the state being about 10,800. So we are recommending that Milton should standardize their customer classes. And we offer the standard classifications for residential service and general commercial service in that little box. And we suggest that the customer database should be reviewed and the customers should be appropriately reclassified. Regarding this standard classification, we're not suggesting that existing customers that may have several tenants, let's say, should be required to incur large investments for individual metering, because basically the residential service is calling for 1 meter per household, okay, or individually metered units. We're not saying that existing customers have to incur huge costs, but we're saying going forward, you should standardize your customer classes. The regular class right now is not a residential class, right? So those customers that are consuming way above the 10,000 that are not residential should be moved over to commercial. It's equitable, fair. You can't do a cost of service study with, it has to be somewhat of a homogeneous class to do it, because the costs will flow from that. Right now, you have to restructure that. We also found that there are many large customers that are receiving your senior citizen discount, well above the 10,000 mark. Okay, so you might want to investigate that. Why are these large customers receiving the senior citizen discount? Okay, are there any questions there? Okay, thank you for your patience with all this. Tariff stuff is always interesting. All right. We're proposing 4 new classifications to address current and potential future requirements. The large primary service will be available to new large load, such as the Bridgepoint Warehouse Complex, that will receive untransformed service from the primary line. They have the transformers, they've paid for them, so it's untransformed service. And the requirement here is the load should be equal to or greater than 1 megawatt. So 1,000 kilowatts is the criteria. This service will feature demand rates as compared to just commodity rates. They'll have a demand rate associated with it, and it'll be seasonally differentiated so that you give them some benefit with the winter-summer differential. It's the rates, it's in the rates. It's in the rate structure as commodity rate. John Don is suggesting that if I refer to consumption and commodity, your rate structures have a commodity rate. They have a base rate and they have a commodity rate. And that is, I understand. That is commodity rate you're charging per kWh. You're charging for the volumetric usage, right? And demand-based rate is saying, that's a great point, Don. Demand-based rate is saying, we're not worrying so much about the commodity. We're saying, what is your peak demand? Because that's the way you design your system. And fixed charge, two components of fixed charges. One is going to be the base rate that you have, and the second one to pick up fixed charges is this demand rate. A great point, Don. Sorry. Okay, is that clear? Because it's very important. If I'm going to design a system, as Don's designing, as they're designing the system, you have to meet the peak requirement, that peak hour of the winter, or your system will be disrupted. And so when you design rates, you're trying to do it with causation. Why am I incurring these costs? And then you establish your rates based on that. The whole cost of service study is based on that principle. And so we're saying for a large customer like Bridgepoint, we want to make sure that they cover those fixed costs to serve them, the peak costs. And we're putting in a fixed charge and not the volumetric or commodity charge. Is it clear? We've worked with this stuff for 40 years. So it's very, can I explain that better? Is that clear to you or not clear? It's a
Could
very
you-
important point.
Could you try explaining it one more time?
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
3 different types of costs, and thank you. 3 different types of charges. Base rate, right? We know that. You have base rate that's going to cover the customer-related costs. You have an energy rate that normally will pick up your variable costs. If BPA is going to charge you on a variable basis, every kWh is, how much you're going to consume over the year. Your demand, your kW, is what you're going to consume at the peak time, peak hour, all right? It's two different concepts. But you have to, your cost of service and your rate design is trying to reflect the costs. So you charge a monthly charge for those customer charges that are not going anywhere, right? Your meter and all that. You do that, and it's a small charge. It's not a very large charge. Then your commodity rate is picking up the kWh, what you're consuming throughout the year. And then for the large primary service, they're going to understand these billings. It's prolific through the industry. We're going to charge them a kW charge to say, on the peak, right, when you consume at the peak, we have to have facilities in place. Our primary lines have to be there for you, and we design those primary lines to meet that peak. So we're going to charge you on the peak. Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
We've been,
It's, I'm trying to use like a,
analogy.
let me think about it
Yeah,
for
okay,
a second.
analogy would be, here's a vice president once told me this one. He said, okay, when you design, for us, we have summer peaks. So his statement to me was, okay, think about the peak summer when it's so hot, right? If you design your system for the kW for the whole year, your system isn't going to be able to meet the peak, okay? But the people should pay for that peak. And that's an efficiency statement. If you just charge them for the volume, the peak isn't coming to play.
You're making them pay for the demand.
Yes.
If you have more people demanding at one period of time, it's going to cost you more because you're pushing the system, so then you need to charge them more.
Better.
Okay.
It's a better statement. Is that clear?
And then when the peak drops, then the price per kilowatt drops.
Yes.
That's why you don't want people to run their dishwasher in the evening.
Well, right. Well,
Right,
you want
right.
them to run in the evening.
Well, yeah,
You
but-
don't want it for, you want them to run in the evening. For us, the peak is, in the middle of the afternoon.
Right, but the conservationists would say don't run it in the evening because your power cost is higher.
Okay.
Is that,
I would see it the other way.
uh,
I would say that I don't want you to run your dishwasher when my demand is highest, because I might have to build another facility
Oh,
to
yeah.
meet that demand.
okay.
All right?
Remember, they're peaking in the winter.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm trying to,
In the morning.
oh,
Yeah.
well, that was a question I had, actually. So the peak is in the morning. We don't want you, because we may have to build another line to support you. Or if the substation, right, we might need a bigger substation. Is it clear? Better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you for the question. Thank you for the push. Okay. So that's what we're proposing for someone like Bridgepoint. It's focused at Bridgepoint now. That is your largest customer. Okay. We're also proposing a new large single load. And this is really a BPA designated class. I'm going to read this because it's going to be clearer. For customers in this class, the power supply requirements from the federal system will be served at BPA's marginal resource cost-based rate known as the new resource firm power rate. The proposal that we have, and I'll explain why, is that the city will recover these power supply costs that BPA will be charging together with a small fee plus Milton Electric's delivery costs. The reason BPA is proposing this is because they're trying to really protect the more economical hydropower for their base customers, okay? These large users are attracted, the data centers, et cetera, that are gonna be at the 10 megawatt, huge consumption, right? What BPA is doing is trying to protect these customers, us, if you would, from these huge facilities using the cheaper power. So they've established a special rate to apply to these customers, and it's much higher than the rates, the tier 1 rate that Milton is exposed to. So we're putting this into play, putting it into the tariff to protect Milton, meaning that if a customer of this size comes and we don't have this in play, they could use some of the other tariffs that are cheaper. So it's really a protective measure. And if you look at the tariffs and your surrounding utilities, the large one, they're putting this in every one of their tariffs to protect them. Why? If BPA is going to charge 11 cents per kilowatt hour for these customers to Milton, and these customers are coming in at a cheaper rate, Milton is still going to have to pay that. So we're putting that as protection. The next one, high density load. This is really geared towards cryptocurrency mining. It's another protection. There's been an industry kind of push to protect the utilities from more transitory, very high density loads coming in. And there's so this is again another the city will be able to protect itself better through contracts once we've identified that, this customers. That's why that's there. Fine. Cannabis
Is another one that
Cannabis.
actually exists
that exists.
close to here.
Cannabis is another one. So high density, we're trying to protect the utility from those. Are we okay? All right. The final piece here is the power cost adjustment. And this mechanism, we're trying to recover power supply costs and transmission costs, the difference between what we projected the cost would be and what the costs actually are. Because we're getting into a more dynamic time period for pricing, especially past 2020 or 2029, we're proposing this so that you have a mechanism to be able to reconcile the difference between what you thought the price would be and what the price actually is, the costs for that supply. So again, it's a protective measure, looking forward and saying we have this dynamic time coming. We want to make sure Milton is covered, okay? Are there any questions there? Okay. Okay, the final step, thank you for your patience with all this. The final step is rate design. And I've already summarized this page, so we're just going to skip it. We're going to go right to the rates. So for all the reasons we've described, improve fixed cost recovery, stabilize revenues, enhance class equity, and to begin to really future-proof the electric tariffs, we're making the following recommendations, and I'm going to go through them quickly. For the residential class, we're suggesting that the subsidy level should be very gradually reduced recognizing the bill impact, starting with June 26 CPI adjustment. So we built into this rate structure that we proposed. Commodity rate is going up a bit, but we're also proposing a $1 increase in the per month charge to begin to better recover the fixed charges that we just spoke about. And we're recommending that the base rate should become the monthly minimum bill. Do you have minimum bills now?
We have base rate. Yes.
Yeah, but do you have a minimum, does it become the minimum bill? Meaning that every month, whether you take service or, take electricity or not, it becomes it's the charge, so, okay. So that's the standard in the industry. Similarly, for general service class, we propose that the base rate should be increased by $5 per month. We call the cost of service for single phase, and we're suggesting a new charge for three-phase or polyphase service. We're also proposing that the commodity rate for this general service should be differentiated by winter and summer. Again, this is looking forward to when more variability is coming. This may be a way to pass on some of these benefits, perhaps lower charges in the summer and higher charges in the winter. Finally, for the new primary service, we're proposing a three-part rate structure, a base rate, a commodity rate, and a demand-based rate differentiated by summer and winter. And so the tariffs that we've shown here, the prices, rates, they've been calculated to accomplish. Now, for the last one, the large primary service, these rate levels are really indicative. As Don has explained and Dustin has explained, we're not certain where Bridgepoint's actual consumption and where their demand is really going to settle. Right now, they're about 50,000 kWh a month or 600,000 for the year. Originally, we were assuming they were going to be, maybe doubling your demands, but that hasn't happened. So our proposal is indicative, and we suggest that we continue the discussions and track what Bridgepoint's consumption really is going into the next year, see where they settle in terms of how much are they consuming through the year, what are they consuming on the peak, because that's what this is all based on. So it's indicative to move forward. Okay. Thank you. Just one slide to recap. Thank you for your patience. So we're suggesting, one, you reclassify certain customers and standardize the customer classifications. Two, you implement the proposed new customer classifications that we spoke about concurrently with the June 26 CPI-U adjustment. This slide says fiscal 27. It should really be June 26. And then gradually reduce the subsidy to the residential class starting in 2026 and continuing each year. You have to start balancing. You have a subsidy going from the commercial customers to the residential customers. You have to gradually balance this in your rates, and very gradually. So I did the sensitivity on it, and you have to be very careful as to how much. What you've been doing is called a across-the-board increase. So if the CPI went up by 3%, you're giving 3% to all the rates, okay? And so you'll see in the study that we did in the documentation, it shows you're weighting the residentials just a bit more so that over time the subsidy goes down and the commercial customers aren't subsidizing the residential as much. It's dangerous to have subsidies build and build and build. Ultimately, the commercial customers, it could be competitive pressures, and it's also equity, right? You don't want them to, so you have in place a strategy to gradually reduce the subsidy to the residentials and take some of the pressure off the commercials. And the same thing with the fixed charge. Instead of doing it across the board, you put more money into the fixed charge every year, and what happens is over time, your fixed charge recovery goes up and your commodity goes down, but it's more balanced at that point. And then finally, we suggest you implement the power cost adjustment factor as we've described. And I think, Dustin, just for informational purposes, probably the embedded embedded rate, meaning that this is to recover a difference between what your projected and your actual. But you have to have a base, so maybe 3.9 cents per kilowatt hour or something like that might be the base that's in your regular rates, okay, that you're tying to. Okay, I thank you very much for your patience and your questions. Are there any other questions that we can field? I hope tariff stuff is, is a different world, right? Are there any questions that we can respond to?
Councilmember Cedar?
So I'm struggling with a couple concepts in here, so I appreciate your patience as I'm not an economist.
Please, I appreciate your patience.
So when we talk about this subsidy, you are talking specifically about a commercial to residential subsidy. So right now, our residential rates are artificially low. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. It's the other way. It's saying if you do the cost of service, and if we brought that up, you would see that the residential class in the margin is providing probably 1% to 2% margin, and the commercial class is probably 40% margin. Okay, and so in our parlance, if you would, the commercial class is subsidizing the residential class. So you want to start equalizing that. So you want the residential margin to go up, say, gradually, really gradually, and then that margin for the commercial to go down, so it's more equitable. It's the way it's done throughout the industry. In the rate of return world, it's a relative rate of return. It'd probably be clearer if I say it that way. If you had a rate base and you're earning 3% from the residentials and you're earning 15% from the commercials, it's not really fair to the commercials. So over time, you bring up that return to the residentials and you bring down the returns from the commercials so that equity says that that's a fair thing. And that's the way it's done. Electric, gas, water, wastewater, all the industries that are on a rate-based approach, that's the way it's done. Okay.
I appreciate that explanation. I appreciate you bringing this to us. I'm going to express a problem I have throughout this, which is that you seem to be expressing a lot of policy opinions, and that troubles me. I don't care for being presented with one proposal as opposed to several, so we can make a decision based on Milton's policies. That's just my own opinion here. But you've given us a lot. I look forward to the full study when it's complete, and I thank you both for your time.
Okay, and thank you, appreciate it. I
Any
think maybe
other-
just to respond real quick, I think when you move from the policy to the one page that says these are the rates we're proposing, that takes you from a policy to an action item. And so that's really, I think, we could have skipped a lot of often we have to kind of give information in the background as compared to just giving you the page.
Yeah, sure. But for instance, you talked about the city should take on debt because it would smooth the rates. That doesn't account for the debt payment. Undoubtedly, there's just no way that the city saves money by taking debt, right? We spend money on
Now
interest.
you have interest expense.
Right, and it's just, I think the graph, it's a fine approach. Lots of cities use debt. I can say that I, as a politician, do not support a small city taking on debt. I think it's the death knell for small cities. So that's what I'm expressing is my frustration with that. So I hear you. One-page summary is never going to do justice to all the work behind it. You've done a great job explaining it, and I think it's a lot to chew on. So thank you again.
I appreciate your frankness. Thank you.
And there is a lot more in the actual final reports that Dustin has around all of these topics from my side and on Elliot's side. We tried to summarize them at the highest level that would make sense. But there's a lot more detail there explaining things.
I haven't seen the full study yet, but historically, when we do a study, whether it be water, storm, electric, there's a projection farther out. And so you've given us 2026. Is it just the increase of CPI, CPU, and the purchase power cost adjustment, or is there recommendations for the future?
Usually when you do rate design like this, you're taking it a year or 2 years at a time.
Okay,
And that's what we're shooting for.
okay.
So next steps, it's a lot of information. So I wanted Quanta here to give us an overview of it, we will send council the full report for both the distribution and the tariffs. And then this item will be coming back with a structured rate approach and an ordinance read in October.
Any other questions? Mayor Protem?
Thank you. And I know the last time we went through this, but then that included financing was, we had 3 different options. Now, will this have options, or is it really just one recommendation?
It's going to be just the recommendation.
Okay.
And this utility is in a fairly different position than some of our other ones that were heavily burdened by capital infrastructure with, no savings or reserve funding to account for those capital needs. So this utility is in a fairly different position.
Well, it definitely looks like it.
I guess maybe to follow up on it, it's really a strategy, okay? You're trying to, over time, reduce these subsidies and increase your fixed cost recovery. And it's very important because you can lose customers if you don't have the right structures in place. They can
Right.
win without the compensation. That's it. Thank you.
So like Director Madden said, this is not the only time we're going to discuss this. So it will come back to at least 2 October meetings, if not 3, and more if needed. So we are having problems sending big files right now in our system, so we'll keep you posted on how to get the reports, but we'll get that handled this week.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, and then just before we adjourn, I just need a note for the record that Councilmember White did arrive at 4:02. And then seeing that we've concluded all of our items this evening, I will adjourn the meeting at 5:27 p.m.